Ubisoft Massive announced last month that they are currently working on Tom Clancy's The Division 2. So what exactly did they say about the game, and what are my thoughts on what I'd like to see in The Division 2? Stick around for 12 things that Division 2 needs. That's next. Hey, it's DeadSockPuppet here. If you're returning, welcome back. If you're new, thank you for the view, and make sure that you click on the blue puppet below to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss out on any content. Division 2, let's dig into that now. So Massive made an announcement on March 8th that they're currently working on the Division 2. In an article on Ubi's website, they state, quote, "We're thrilled to announce that we are working on Tom Clancy's The Division 2 and that development will be led by Massive Entertainment in collaboration with Ubisoft Reflections, Red Storm Entertainment, Ubisoft Annecy, Ubisoft Shanghai, and Ubisoft Bucharest. The Division 2 will be powered by an updated version of the Snowdrop engine that enables us to realize our ambitions for the sequel, but more importantly, we're also taking everything we learned over the past 2 years and applying it towards the sequel to make sure that we get it right." End quote. So, fantastic things in there. All the great studios that worked on the first game coming back to work on this next game. Also, they said that they've actually made some updates to the Snowdrop engine, which, for those that played Division 1, there were a lot of times that there were things that Massive wanted to do or one of the other studios wanted to do, but because of limitations of the Snowdrop engine, they weren't able to do that. So hearing that they've actually made some adjustments to that, always a good thing. And finally, the fact that they said, quote, "We are also taking everything we learned over the past 2 years and applying it towards the sequel to make sure that we get everything right," end quote. So whenever a new installment in a series comes out, you're always wondering how is it going to fare compared to the previous one and the previous ones. And so in this case, hearing that they're actually taking the information and what they learned in the previous 2 years with Division 1 and applying that to Division 2 is very promising. There's that concern that they had with Destiny 2 not living up to Destiny 1. Was this going to happen with Division 2? While we can't know until the game actually comes out, it's nice to see that they're actually taking this information and not just completely starting from scratch. So some things that are coming along to kind of help round out Division 1, there's going to be a new achievement that's called Shields. They're going to be added, which will allow players to earn special rewards in Division 2 by completing them, which is really cool. That actually, it gives you an incentive to keep playing Division 1 until Division 2 comes out. They state that more info is going to be presented at E3, which will be in this June. And while they didn't discuss a potential release date, there's a lot of speculation online that the game will probably release in March 2019, which would be 3 years after Division 1 dropped. In addition to this announcement, Massive released the 2018 or Year 3 roadmap for Division 1, showing 2 more patches that will release, 1.8.1 in April and 1.8.2 in June, which will introduce the shields. What do I want to see in Division 2? Number 1, I want to see Massive pick up where they left off with Division 1. So the game needs to begin with the mechanics and game state from 1.8.1, 1.8.2, and beyond, and rather than take steps backward like Destiny 2 did. They need to keep the PvE elements like world tiers, world bosses, daily missions, and bounties. Number 2 is to rework the DZ to make it as advertised in the trailer prior to the release of the game. It's in a lot better state where it is right now with 1.8, however, it's still not where it was advertised and I think where the devs originally envisioned it prior to the release of Division 1. So reworking that to get it closer to the pre-release of Division 1 I think would be a great step for the Dark Zone. Number 3, I'd like to see dedicated PvP modes from the start. I'd like to see them keep the modes like Last Stand, Resistance, and Skirmish, but I'd like to see them add modes from other shooter games like Call of Duty, Battlefield, and Destiny, and make the new game modes a mix of both objective-based and kill-based to attract a wider range of players. And to avoid damaging the lore of the game, the new modes can be explained as training exercises for agents to improve their skills by practicing against other agents. It's a very big thing for anybody that's into the Division is that they have a very rich lore and story behind the game, and that anything that the developers do, they try to do it within that framework so that it's not, well, we're just going to bolt this on because we think it's a good idea. It has to fit within that framework. Going along with that, number 4, I'd like to see them expand the story and whether the game stays in New York or moves to another city. Specifically, I'd like to see with the story an explanation of what happened to Keener. I think there's a lot of people that have a lot of speculation, there's a lot of great fan fiction on it, but I'd like to see what did the developers, what did the story writers actually plan for him. If the story moves to another city, I'd like to see them tie up all the loose ends in New York City as the story progresses into Division 2. They could possibly use feedbacks, echoes, intel found in the next game, but I don't want them to leave New York just where it sits. I'd like to see how that's progressing as it moves from where Division 1 ends to where Division 2 picks up. As with adding the new PvP modes, any addition to the story and possible changes to a new city need to be done within the lore of the game. Massive's created such a deep, rich background in Division 1, I'd hate to see them not maintain this with Division 2 and any future games in the franchise. Number 5 is inventory management. So loadouts are a good start, but they aren't enough. Both character inventory and player stash need to have tabs with it, or they need to have options to sort or filter when viewing a character's gear. No more having to scroll through 100 plus items to find a weapon, mod, or gear piece at the bottom of your stack. It would be nice to be able to swap gear and weapons between characters without having to move the item or items from the stash, sign out of the first character, sign into the second character, and then retrieve another item. Anybody that knows when you have been playing one character and you need to switch to a different character because of loadout, one reason or another, you need to complete certain daily missions, your incursions for the week, having to swap a gear piece or a weapon, drop it into the stash, then pull up the other character, it's a pain. They just need to find some way that you can pull from another character, whether it's through a companion app or through changing the way the inventory works. So that moves on to my 6th point. Companion app like Destiny has, which allow players to do things like review their character's inventory and stash, change or reset loadouts, equip gear and weapons on the character, move inventory between their characters and the stash, and possibly move inventory directly between characters. Destiny had a great app. I know it was fan-made. There was originally talks of one possibly being for Division 1 that was then scrapped due to, I think, time constraints and not having the resources to be able to put it together. This is something that I think would be a fantastic addition for Division 2, especially since they're building on the first game, and so some of the assets could be carried over. But I think it's something that would be perfect for helping with inventory management. Number 7, I'd like to see some clan support. Things like allowing players to use clan tags on their account, allow clans groups to create custom patches for their clan to sport on their characters, have clan events in addition to global events, complete with rankings, leaderboards, rewards for clans that compete certain objectives or reach a certain level or certain score during the event. Number 8, whether game is in the same city or in a new location, I'm not concerned which. I just want to make sure that if Division 2 stays in New York City, that they add new areas but keep the current ones playable. And if it moves to a new city, the game needs to have just as rich and detailed of an environment as Division 1, and the initial map should be at least as big, if not bigger, than the playable locations in Division 1 began with. Number 9, I'd like to see a support drone that can be controlled by separate players, preferably from a mobile interface like a tablet or phone. Division 1 was originally going to have. They released a fantastic trailer showing a player playing via tablet, coming in and supporting, helping spot enemies, helping to kind of be like a battlefield commander. I think this would be something great that would allow more players into the game, and especially with mobile becoming so popular, a way to keep players engaged when they don't have time to sit down to their console or to their computer. Number 10, I'd like to see a dynamic world tier system similar to how Diablo 3 has with Rifts. This would allow the game to increase difficulty without just making enemies more tanky. It creates a better endgame and allows players to farm gear and weapons with better rolls and better quality. Basically, once you get to that endgame with a system kind of like Diablo 3, you just can keep slowly ratcheting up the difficulty, which gives you more and more incentive. They can, along with that, slowly have the gear score increase. As you know, you just keep the same gear, but just slowly ratchet up the stats. I think it'd be a fantastic idea. It gives the game more playability, and if they can build a system into it, I don't think it would require as much maintenance from the live team. Number 11, I'd like to see an expansion of the recalibration and optimization system. I'd like to see them keep the current options that they have, but I would like them to add a transmogrify or transmog to gear to give it a different look like Diablo 3. Big deal behind this is that not all real-world combat medics look the same, nor do all operators or snipers. So you could have 2 different snipers from 2 different units, they'd have a completely different look. In the Division, you're pretty much kind of looking the same, just if you have the sniper gear set, so if you're running like a Hunter's Faith set, they're all going to look the same. If you're a medic and you're running a reclaimer set, you can have 2 reclaimers, they're going to look the same, with the exception of clothing. I'd like to be able to have a way to customize that gear to give it your look or to kind of mix and match your favorite looks of your pieces. So number 12, I'd like to see the current developer community relationship maintained. So what I mean is continue to provide updates via state of the game, even if they're just 5-minute check-ins. Keep using PTS systems to check updates and patches before they're implemented to avoid players being stuck with broken game elements for weeks or months while Massive tries to create a fix, test the fix, and then get it approved through the platforms. I'd like to see them continue to expand on the ETF network and continue leveraging players that are part of that group. There doesn't have to be an ETF every patch or every update, but maybe 1 or 2 times a year, and as the game roadmap is being developed or adjusted for the next 6 to 12 months. These 3 elements, as they slowly brought them together, have helped to keep the fan base engaged, keep the player base engaged, allow Massive to keep their finger on the pulse of the community so they have an idea of what the community is looking for in the game and where they'd like to see it go. So there's the 12 things I'd like to see, and if I had to press them down into 3 things of what I'd like most out of Division 2, they would be dedicated PvP with additional game modes out of the gate. This could make the DZ more enjoyable for all players and closer to what Massive intended it to be in Division 1. If PvPers have a place to battle, it would better round out a shooter side of the game. Number 2, better inventory management for both character and inventory and the player stash. This would allow players more time to play the game as it's intended, as opposed to playing Inventory Management Simulator. And finally, Massive needs to maintain the current relationship with communications channels with the player base. Keeping these communication channels open worked really well post-update 1.5-ish in Division 1, and it should keep Division 2 the game that the community wants. So my biggest concern with Division 2 is that there are things that players will be expecting to be included and changes to make the game better and expand on the foundation Massive built with Division 1, as well as retaining aspects of the game and mechanics that are what made Division what it is. If Massive tweaks the wrong portions of the game, Division 2 could release steps behind where Division 1 ends, similar to what has happened with Destiny 2. While Massive is much more open to the community and willing to engage with them and listen to the suggestions of their player base, Division 1 had a rocky start, and as Destiny 2 has shown Bungie, a rocky start to a sequel can start putting the nails in the coffin to the franchise. So that pretty much wraps up my thoughts on Division 2. Do you agree with what I've said? What do you think Massive should do with Division 2? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you can, list your top 3 want list items for Division 2 along with why you think they should be in the game. Thanks again for watching. Remember to comment below with what you'd like to see in Division 2, and if you can, narrow it down to your top 3 things. Also, if you haven't already, click the blue puppet below to subscribe, and remember to ring the bell to get notifications when I post new content.